If you like the sweet science, get ready to talk boxing on the Gloved Fist podcast with top boxing writers Frank LOTIERZO and Jack Hirsch. Frank, a former amateur boxer out of Philadelphia, writes for NY Fights and can be seen on the Boxing Channel. Jack, an amateur boxer who competed in the New York Golden Gloves, was a 6-term president of the Boxing Writers Association. And now, here's Frank LOTIERZO and Jack Hirsch.
And we're back. Welcome to Glove Fist. My name is Frank LOTIERZO, former writer, try to be full-time observer, joined by former 6th-term of the Boxing Writers Association of America, Jack Hirsch. Jack, it's been a while since I've been excited to do a show about upcoming fights that we can talk about. We have a big one coming up this weekend. You have the Boxing Writers Dinner Thursday night. Terrence Crawford's going to be there. We have an anniversary fight that we can talk about because some think it's the biggest fight of all time. So we have a plethora of things to dive into tonight.
Well, we do, and you gave me the perfect segue. I won't spend a long time on it, even though I might mention it again later. This Thursday evening, the Boxing Writers Association of America is going to have its 101st, you heard me, 101st BWAA banquet dinner. And even though we started all the awards like the Fight of the Year award won in stink during that time. The Fight of the Year award was actually in 1938. It came into being. But you mentioned Terrence Crawford. He's going to be there to get his Fighter of the Year award. And it was pointed out to me today, something I didn't know, Frank, which is interesting. When we look at greatness in the fighter, of all the Fighters of the Year in the history of the BWAA, he's won the award the furthest along, the biggest gap of time. He won it in 2014. He was the BWAA Fight of the Year, and then again in 2025.
That's a testament to his longevity and just how consistent he is. I did not know that, but that's pretty impressive. I mean, you had, I think Ali won it the most and Lewis won it a lot. But it was all in a period of time, like 5, 6, 7 years, maybe 10 for Ali. But 12, what's that for Crawford?
11
12
years apart, but it's a tricky
11.
award. It's a very tricky award, okay? Because you could have the greatest career, but even in your good years, someone is just a little better. I'll give you a case in point. Sugar Ray Robinson only won the award once. Willie Pep never won the award. Roy Jones was the fighter of the decade, but he never won the Fighter of the Year. He beat Tony. George Foreman knocks out Michael Mora. So Foreman wins it that year and Jones doesn't. But so it's kind of a tricky award. Look, this is crazy. Roy Jones never won the award. Willie Pep never did, as I said. Robinson once. Glenn Johnson won it one year. Carl Frampton won it one year, and you're not going to put them in the league of the guys I just mentioned.
It all depends on who your opponent is. It's like, and timing. It's a little bit of luck because, like you say, Jones had a great victory, but I think 2 weeks before that or 2 weeks after that, Foreman knocked out Michael Moore to become the oldest champ in history or oldest heavyweight champ.
Yeah, and I don't know who would be in the lead this year. We have quite a ways to go with 2026. But has anyone established a clear lead? If I had to take a guess by the end of the year, Frank, who's going to be the Fight of the Year next year? The year still has to play out. Just a guess here. I'll take a fly on David Benavidez. I'm going to take a guess. Maybe he gets the fight with Dimitri Bivol, perhaps. And if he won that fight, clearly it would be hard to deny him.
What about Moses Atalma, who signed for a fight today? We're going to get to.
You need a high-profile victory. He's not going to get it this year. He's not going to get it. Just beating guys who are okay, but nothing special doesn't do it.
Hrgovic will get him some attention, though.
Hrgovic is mediocre. You don't get the fight.
But not the Fight of the Year. But I'm just saying because if he fights 3 times, if he fights once more after Hrgovic, he could be in the running only because he's high profile, Jack, and people are starting to know who he is.
If he's busy enough, he beat Jermaine Franklin. I think it was this year, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, I'm not certain. Was it this year, his last win? But if it was this year, beats Hergovic, but he'd have to up the ante a little bit.
He'd have to fight somebody good after Hergovic, right?
Right,
And
and he's
we'll
not going to have
talk
that
about that fight, Jack.
Yeah.
Let's
But
talk about the fight
Yeah.
that has me very excited. You know, I haven't posted in a while because nothing moves me. But this fight between Boots and Xander Zayas. Boots is probably the big fish at 154. It's a unification bout. You could criticize, if you want to be a critic, the opposition of both guys. Where after this fight, you can't say that. This is a signature win for whoever wins the fight. And as we've discussed earlier, you know, there's a little more pressure on Boots because Zayas is only 23, Boots is 28. Boots has had a little bit more hype around him. He's kind of got to close the deal and justify that. Whereas Zayas, I don't think there's as much heat on him to win.
No, I mean, Boots is under a lot of pressure because Boots can't just win. Boots has got to win decisively at the very least. At the very least, I'm going to tell you why, Frank. You might disagree. If Boots wins a hard-earned, close, unanimous decision, even if it's a great fight, let's say it's a fight of the year candidate, it's a super fight off the charts, and Boots wins by 3 scores, 115, 112, he doesn't establish himself as a truly elite fighter in the league of a Terence Crawford or David Benavidez, for example. Boots has got to do something substantial. He's got to create a major buzz. This fight has to enter Boots into the pound-for-pound discussion, like it's one of the top 5. People have to be buzzing about Boots like he's the next big star in boxing after this fight. He can't do what Devin Haney did to me, okay? And I just see a little thing. Yeah, A Junior, okay. But he can't do the same thing that Devin Haney did to me. And what Devin Haney did to me was, I thought he was going to be a generational talent. So what does he do? He just gets by Vasily Lomachenko in a disputed decision. Whether you feel Haney won the fight or not's irrelevant. He no longer created a buzz that this is at least the next Pernell Whitaker. He didn't do it. Okay.
All right, I'm going to play devil's advocate, Jack, because I can see what you're saying, but here's where I see it differently. If Boots mutilates Xander Zayas in 2 rounds, he will not get credit because they'll say, well, he really wasn't that good. This is the first time he stepped up to the elite level and he got destroyed. On the other hand, if he wins a fight the way a 2-way fight like the Leonard Hearns first fight, and he comes back and he wins, and Zayas showed that he belonged and he was good, no. I think he gets credit.
No, Frank, no. The difference is this. Tommy Hearns had proven himself before he faced Leonard. And that was pretty much of an even fight going in for the most part. Leonard may have been marginally favored, but that was about it. I don't remember what the final odds were. Spence and Crawford, same thing. It was basically considered an even fight going in. Crawford may have been a tiny favorite. In this fight, Boots is a clear favorite. Anyone picking Zayas is clearly picking an upset here. Xander Zayas is not expected to win this fight outside of maybe his small inner circle. Now, the biggest Zayas fans maybe think he can win, but there's a big difference. So Boots can't have a life and death struggle in the ring with Zayas, because if he does, it knocks his stock down.
I disagree, Jack, because
what would Sugar Ray Leonard do with Zayas? What would Terence Crawford do with Zayas?
Jack, if Zayas shows He's look, nobody doubts Boots' ability, but if Zayas puts up a hell of a fight and beats Boots up some, and Boots has to come back and beat him and pull it out in the end, I think they both rise. I think if Boots wins a one-sided fight like Crawford did over Spence, I think that they just say Zayas wasn't that good. And if he blows him out in 2 rounds, I think the best thing that could happen to him, Jack, people can say that Boots is a big favorite, but if Zayas steps up and fights really good, then people are going to say, well, maybe we underestimated him, and he showed in this fight he's that guy.
Let me ask you this, Frank. Let me ask you this. Do you, when I mentioned Alexander Zayas, do you think of a fighter who has the potential to maybe be an all-time great? No.
No, I think he falls short of that.
If I mention Boots Ennis, do you think the potential of maybe being an all-time great is there?
I think he has a little bit higher. Yes, Jack, but that doesn't mean I'm right, though. That doesn't mean I'm right. Nobody was calling Crawford an all-time great in his 20th fight.
But no one
or had the potential to be that. Nobody but me, anyhow.
Crawford never disqualified himself as such because he took care of business against all these guys, and he did it decisively.
But Jack, this is why they fight. We'll see how good Zayas really is.
If Alexander Zayas was fighting Terrence Crawford, okay, and let's say Crawford was in the same part of his career that Boots was, Sanders not going to push him to a split decision. Crawford is going to be a clear winner at the very least. It's just because.
But Jack, we know that now. But look, you thought Madrimov gave Crawford a tough fight and it was on the fringe a little bit. You never know. That's why they fight. I'm saying the best thing that can happen for both of them is it's a knockdown, drag out war, and one of them pulls it out. If it's a blowout on Boots' side, he will not get credit, Jack. We've been around this sport too long. If you win in an early round KO, the guy that got KO'd gets no credit at all. He was never any good. And then if you beat him decisively like Crawford did, but it goes rounds, but it's not competitive, they'll say, well, he was injured coming in or he had a car accident or whatever. But if it's a two-way fight, like Leonard and Hearns, or like, I hate to use it over, but say like an Ali Frazier fight or something like that, he will get a lot of credit. And people say Zayas is really good.
He will, no, Boots will get credit if he's in a great fight. Let's say he pulls it out, he's behind, gets a late knockout, or this or that. But we're also going to say he was exposed. We're also, and Boots has to make a statement where people are whispering, look, Crawford's retired, so they're not going to push Crawford to come out of retirement to fight Boots. Crawford shouldn't feel the pressure, but there are going to be some whispers. If Boots totally dominates, wow, we'd love to see Crawford fight Boots.
I think he knows that's not going to happen, Jack. And again, we're saying these things about Zayas, but we could be wrong. He could turn out to be, he might really be good or better than good. Maybe, borderline Hall of Famer. We don't know that until they fight. But all I know is if Boots wins easy, he will not get credit. If he beats Zayas up and Zayas shows he can take a punch, he can weather the storm and come back and make it a fight. But at the end, like Leonard, Boots just pulls out a little bit. No, he won't be considered the next Ray Leonard, but he'll take that next step, and that will be a good win because he was tested and Zayas showed that he's the real deal.
Okay, well, we'll see. I just feel it's a question of Boots having a chance to stake his claim as one of the most feared fighters in boxing. I think Boots has a chance to move alongside David Benavidez in that type of category, a really feared guy who's head and shoulders. I don't want to say above everyone in his division because for all we know, Bivol beats Benavidez, okay? And for all we know, Benavidez fights Beterbiev and gets upset. Beterbiev beats him. Who knows for sure? But we'd agree that Benavidez is boxing's boogeyman right now. And Boots has
right now, and a big win by Boots puts him there. Yes.
Exactly. Same thing we're talking about other fights. I mean, like with Moses Otamo and Hrgovic, Otamo has to dominate. Winning a hard-fought, close decision against Hrgovic hurts Otamo's stock. It hurts
his stock as the boogeyman, Jack, but it doesn't mean he's still not good and doesn't have the potential.
No,
I mean, Mike Tyson went rounds with James Quick Tillis.
I'm thinking of a select few fighters who have ability to ascend to a position of possibly an all-time great. And are they just going to be ordinary good champions, or are they going to be special champions? And if Boots Ennis is really the type of fighter we think he is, he can be given a tough fight by Zayas. I'm not saying he can't be given a tough fight, but it can't go the distance and be a close fight. That's the point.
I think you're writing the final chapter too soon. When Terrence Crawford was 20, when he was Boots' age, when he was 28, that was what, 10 years ago, basically. So we're talking 2016. Nobody was saying, I was saying it, I thought potentially, but that was just a rare thing for me to get it that right. But we weren't saying that Crawford could be an all-time great. And one day we're going to think, Sugar Ray Leonard and Crawford fight. Yeah, Leonard might be favored, but it's not a give me. Boots is only 28, Jack. He's got a long way to go, and he can grow some. He doesn't have to look like Crawford did against Spence in this fight. If he did, it would help him. But I agree. I just think if he's tested a little bit, but he comes through, I think it shows he's good.
I'm not talking about that. He can be given somewhat of a tough fight. That's fine. He could be given a tough fight, but it's the end result that counts. I mean, that's
you mean if he wins a split decision, he takes a hit? Yes, I agree.
Look, when Crawford beat Spence, not Spence, Sean Porter, he stopped him in the 10th round. I mean, I was at that fight in Vegas. I only had Crawford up 5 rounds to 4. Many people did. People forget that was a close fight.
Look at 5-4. I had it the same way.
Right, but then Crawford knocks him down twice in the 10th round and stops him.
He finished it emphatically.
He finished it, and we also know if Porter had survived and we went to rounds 11 and 12, Crawford would have, with the knockdowns, would have had a big lead that only would have gotten bigger. Okay? So it's okay if Zayas gives Boots a tough fight for 7-8 rounds. It could even be even. And then Boots eventually gets him out of there. That's fine. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about if we hear like it's a split decision and Boots gets it and the crowd is booing.
So then we basically agree.
That hurts Boots.
I agree. So we basically agree.
Right. You might say he's not. Boots doesn't want at the end of this fight people to say, well, he's not as good as we thought he is. He could be had. He's not really all that. And you don't want Terrence Crawford, who's probably going to be at the fight because the Boxing Writers Dinner is Thursday and the show at Barclays is Saturday. Crawford sending out a tweet laughing about Boots, like he did about the MMA guy who was challenging him who lost.
Right. Jack, let me ask you this. At the conclusion, when you went to bed the night of Hearns Leonard won, did you think more of Hearns at the end of that fight than you did going in, or did you think less of him?
Frank, I have picked a ton of wrong fights in my life. So I'm not one of these guys who...
But I'm not talking about who you picked, Jack. That doesn't matter.
No, it's the same. Let me tell you why. I thought the same because I, believe it or not, and I'm not saying it's revisionist history, I picked Leonard to come from behind and stop Hearns in 14 rounds. And I just happened to get lucky with that prediction. Believe me, I picked tons of fights wrong, so I'm not bragging on that one fight. I thought, because Hearns was an exceptional fighter, an exceptional talent.
Okay. I picked Leonard to win the fight too. And my biggest reason was I thought that, and I talked George Benton into canceling his bet on Hearns and put it on Leonard. And I've told that story where he gave me some of the money from the bet when he came in the gym the following day. I picked Leonard to win the fight But when that fight was over, even though Leonard won it and he won it in his signature fashion, I drove home that night and I found out and I realized things about Tommy Hearns I know. I didn't know he could box quite as good as he did. I didn't know he was as tough as he was and had the endurance that he had. Where, Jack, if we go up until that fight with Hearns, he never had to prove that. We didn't know that. So I thought more of Hearns coming off that loss than I did after he beat Cuevas.
Yeah, no, he didn't have the endurance in that fight. Okay, Hearns. And I mean, you could argue.
Jack, he went 14 rounds in the desert heat, and he was winning.
He faded out at the end, though. And listen,
he faded out because the other guy just, it was an all-time great and was not going to be denied. My point is, Hearns in a loss proved that he was the real deal. I think if Boots wins a fight like that, I think they both get more credit because we'll look at Zayas and say, you know what? We thought Boots was really like the guy and blow him out. And like, it was a fight for 12, 11, 10 rounds. Yeah, but Boots will get the credit like Leonard because he pulled it out.
What is your prediction?
Okay, well, before we get to that, Jack, I'm going to shoot myself in the foot after the argument I just made. Before we get to predictions, let me ask you this. No, I'm picking Boots, but let me ask you this. Can you name one thing that Zayas is better at than Boots? Just one thing.
Moving backward.
You think he can fight going back better?
Yeah. I think Boots has a problem, fighting backwards. I mean, he's a come-forward fighter for the most part. If you could force Boots to fight backwards, he's not nearly, as devastating. He doesn't put the punches together quite as well. But
I think he can counter going back. So you can come up with one thing. I disagree with that, but you have one thing. Jack, I can't come up.
Zayas' hands might be a little quicker, but the punches aren't quite as hard.
You see, I think they're both hittable. I think they both like to press the action, but they can counter if they're forced back. They're not at their best, but it's not like they can't fight going back. But I just can't, Jack, think of one thing where I can give Zayas the definite check that he does better than Boots. I just think Boots just does everything a little bit better. I think their speed is close, but if I had to give the check, I think Boots gets off quicker. I think Boots has a better jab. I think he punches harder. I think he's a little more instinctive. I think he has a little better.
He puts the punches together better, Boots.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He does everything better. So that being said, how do you pick Zayas? Like I'm in my mind, I'm trying to make a case. I'm thinking, well, what can he do? Can he outbox Boots? I don't think so. Can he outspeed him? I don't think so. Can he outfight him? I think he can hang for a while, but I don't think he can do it enough to win.
We hear about the term in sports getting off to a quick start. I think it's very important for Zayas to get off to a quick start. He's going to have the crowd in his favor. Keep that in mind. There'll be people coming from Philadelphia, but there's going to be a large Puerto Rican contingent. He really is. So the crowd is going to favor, I think, Zayas, 75, 80% or whatever. And maybe more than that. Who knows? I mean, I shouldn't even give percentages. It's just going to clearly favor him. If he can do some really positive things early, tag Boots with some flurries, get the crowd going, get into the fight. And there's going to be points in the fight where Boots, if he doesn't get on track for 2-3 rounds, he'll eventually get on track, Boots, and he'll be going at Zayas at full force. Can Zayas live with Boots in the pocket at certain segments of the fight? Because he's going to have to fight him at certain points. He can't just move side to side, flurry this and that, push him back. He's going to have to stand there and, go punch for punch at times. What kind of success could he have on the inside I don't think he could have long-term success and live with Boots there for long.
No, I don't think so either, Jack. It's going to be both of these guys fight. They both come to fight and they both let their hands go. And in that situation, I'm going to go with the guy that has a better offense. And normally with Boots, you would be a little bit afraid because he does get hit. But the problem is Zayas gets hit too. So that's almost a wash the way I see it, because they're both offensive fighters that get hit. I can't see how it goes the distance, Jack. I just can't see how it goes the distance. I like Boots to win by stoppage. And you know what? Maybe another thing that's really has me in his corner about winning is, I've said this before with certain fighters, there are just some fights that guys have got a lot of hype. Boots has got a lot of hype, and he knows if he's ever going to shut everybody up and make his mark, he's got to do it in this fight. He's got to look like the A fighter in this fight. So I think that being the case, I think I like Boots to stop him somewhere between 8 and 10. Excuse me.
I'm on board too. I could see it at the point where it's obvious Zayas is out of the fight, maybe after 6 rounds, and the crowd will urge him on. He'll try to come back. He'll hang in there, show plenty of heart, and he might have to be retired on a stool. You know, I'll call it like at the end of 8 rounds, Zayas is retired on a stool. That's my feeling. But Zayas might go out without a whimper. You know, before going out, he might stand toe-to-toe. And even though this isn't his goal, I suspect he'll give us a good show. He'll trade with Boots, stand up to him, make it exciting. And I think the term class will eventually tell. Not that Zayas doesn't have class.
No, the other guy just is a level better, probably.
Exactly. I think Zayas, you can argue when the night's over, he's still on a championship level, but Boots is on a pound-for-pound level. That's the difference. Zayas can be a champion again, win the sanctioning body belt or 2 later on, you know, come back from the defeat. But I think with Boots, it's full force ahead. Yeah, you know, Boots is going to have a ready-made opponent if he wins this fight, or either him or Zayas. You hear Virgil Ortiz and Oscar De La Hoya, it looks like they're back together. It looks
I saw that.
Yeah. I mean, nothing's been announced, but even Oscar was smiling, saying.
And isn't one of the Charlos back in the mix too? Isn't Jermell Charlo? They talk about him maybe.
Yeah, one of the Charlos. Oh wow, they're fighting on the undercard. I forgot he's fighting a named guy, maybe not a guy.
I think it's Jermell though, right? Because I think Jamal just got in some trouble.
Jamal, you know, you got.
He's just got another DWI I saw the other day.
Jamal is troubled, unfortunately. I haven't heard of Jamal committing crimes against other people. I haven't heard of that, thankfully. So
no, his issue is DUIs.
But DUI indirectly is committing a crime against other people because you're on the roads and you're posing a threat. But authorities take care of it. But Jamal was out of the ring all this time because he's troubled. You know, I hope he gets the help he needs.
Jack, you know what I want? You know, no one's talked about, and I've seen some of the clips of Zayas training, and I would love to know, and I don't know if they'll do it and if we'll find out, but I would love to know what these 2 guys enter the ring weighing, because I think these guys are going to be big. They're going to weigh 54, but I would not be surprised if they were 170 or more.
Frank, I went to the press conference to announce their fight, and what struck me was how big Zayas looked, not compared to Boots. Boots looked solid. He looked good. It doesn't. We're talking about in street clothes, but something about Zayas, he looked. I don't want to say pudgy. He looked round. Okay, he didn't look sleek. Yeah, and you know.
Have you seen any of the videos of him training, Jack?
No.
He looks fit and strong. Believe me.
I'd have to believe it, and to Zayas' credit, he's the one that asked for this fight. He made it happen.
Although Boots gave him a hard time because Boots wanted to be winner, take 55-45, and Zayas wouldn't do it.
You want to know something? That is cheap theater on the part of Boots. I mean, I was there when he was urging that. That's complete theater. That's complete nonsense. And if I was Zayas, you know how I would have answered it? I would have said, hey, anytime I get in the ring, I can lose. I respect all fighters. There's a chance you could beat me. I'm not going to gamble my money. But since you're certain there's no chance, you could lose to me, how about I get 75% of your purse? Make a handshake now. Make a verbal contract with me. I think I could lose to you. So I'm not giving you any of my money if I lose. Put Boots in that spot. And Boots would shut his big mouth and wouldn't use that cheap theater that fighters use.
That's actually a pretty good comeback.
It is.
But if I was Boots, I would just come back and say, well, you know what? You're not getting my money. Let's just make this who gets more. You're not getting my money with no risk. And basically, that's what you want.
I would be saying that to Boots. I'd say, look, I think there's a chance I could possibly lose to you. I don't think I will, but do you think there's a chance you could lose to me? And Boots would say no. And like I said, then you put him in that spot.
Well, maybe you should have talked to Zayas. That would have been good. But anyhow, we both like Boots to win inside the distance.
On the undercard, a guy we could have back on the show. We'd like him to come back on the show, and Bryce Mills. He's fighting Emiliano Vargas in a junior welterweight fight. Now, that's Fernando's brother, right? Or son? Fernando's son, unbeaten in 16 fights, promoted by Top Rank, hot prospect. And Bryce Mills, called him out. It's a fight Bryce Mills wants. And it's easy to say Bryce Mills has nothing to lose in this fight. But in reality,
you can't say that. There's always something.
It's going to be the semifinal. It's supposed to be the fight before the main event. Frank, are you going to get this show? Are you?
I have to get it. I have to figure out how to get it, Jack, somehow.
Frank, I could just see you. I hope it doesn't happen, but I would be cracking up laughing at it if it did. If I had to picture you trying with the modern technology to access the fight, and you are unable to get it, to see your frustration, I would be doubling over laughing.
Well, the problem is, Jack, I'll be down the shore, and I'm less apt with the TVs down there than I am at home. So, but I'm going to manage to see it somehow, some way. I haven't seen enough of Vargas to make a pick on that fight. All I can tell you is this: I followed Bryce through social media, and I really like him. And I hope he wins. And it's a great, great opportunity. And one thing we know, I'm not going to discount Vargas, but one thing we know about Bryce Mills, Jack, he'll be ready.
Yeah, no. Vargas has to be a clear favorite. He's the hot prospect.
Right.
And what's working against Bryce Mills is geography, too. Fighters from upstate New York who aren't as, that well known. They don't create the same buzz. Vargas has had these TV dates with Top Rank. Like you said, he's Fernando's son. So the whole, he has the bloodlines. And the thought is, well, who's Bryce Mills? He never even had an amateur fight. But upstate.
So basically, to get 7 rounds, Bryce has to win 9.
No. He'll get a fair call from the judges. I don't mean it that way.
Well, I'm not as sure that is you, but.
Well, it's in New York, the Barclays Center.
You're right.
Frank, it could arguably work the other way because there's a certain psychology with judges, even though they intend to be 100% honest. If, for all we know,
they go the other way to try to.
Might have a couple of judges who've already judged his fights, and they see the crowd he has upstate, and judges are human. They take a liking to a guy. They don't tell anyone, but they take a liking to him. They're not going to cheat for him, but if all factors are equal, they want him to have success, and they might know Bryce, and Vargas is just another guy, a hot prospect, but it's what is.
Well, I will be looking forward to that, and I'm going to cross my fingers because I really like the kid and I like to see him win. But you know what? This is a tough sport. It's a tough business, and these are the fights you have to win to get to that next level where you want to be. And the thing I like about Jack is I know this much, and I say this all the time. The only thing fighters control is they can't control how much talent they have because they were born with that. They can't do anything about that. The only thing they have control of is how much they put into it and how much work they do. And when you can look across the ring at the other guy and say, you know, you may be better than me, but one thing I know, you didn't do more or prepare better than me. That's a good feeling. And I like that. And I know the kid's tough. So if he wins, it'll be great. If he loses, it'll be because Vargas was the better guy.
Yeah, I would think so. And if you're asking me for a pick, okay, I'm not going to make the same mistake. Look, I thought Shakur Stevenson was going to beat Teofimo Lopez, but I couldn't pick Stevenson on that fight because I'm friends with the Lopezes. Okay. So you know the feeling on that, Frank. I mean, you were telling me a great story because you had sparred a lot with Curtis Parker. You liked him a lot personally. You said, "Oh, he'll beat Marvin Hagler." You can't look at it objectively, but I'm going to look at it objectively here. Even though Bryce isn't a friend of mine, we've had him on the show, you know, and so on. And Russell Peltz is his manager, so we are rooting for him. I'm going to admit that. You know, I'm picking Vargas to win. I mean, he's the hot prospect, more of an amateur career. But, you know, we'll see what unfolds.
See, Jack, that's a little bit of the reason why sometimes I don't like interviewing fighters because I end up liking them and it clouds my judgment. And there's two things going here. I am very much rooting for Bryce. And I've only seen Vargas a couple times. So I'm not going to pick. But, Jack, you know what? Even if I would probably pick Vargas to win just to try to jinx him and be wrong. So under no circumstance would I pick Bryce because I don't want to jinx him.
Yeah, you know, so you're telling me, Frank, you're not going to make a prediction Anthony Joshua against Christian Pranga because you went on record and you said to Pranga, I'm paraphrasing. You hope he kicks Joshua's behind, and you more or less told him, not in these exact words, you think he can do it. Okay?
Jack, I think Anthony Joshua's liable to lose to anybody, especially a guy that has a punch and a lot of confidence. So I will pick Joshua to win that fight, Jack. I'll tell you that right now. Yeah. But I would never bet on it.
It's funny. I spoke to Pranga's manager today, Keith Sullivan. Pranga's training hard. He's taking this very, very seriously.
He's supposed to, Jack. And again,
if Joshua's screwing around, which I doubt that he is, Joshua can't pull an Ali and enter the ring not in form, out of shape, not focused. If that's the case, you know, there could be problems. Look when Ali fought Chuck Wepner. I mean, you thought Ali on his worst day would play with Wepner, and Ali didn't have a good day, but Wepner did bother him all fight long.
You're right. I just think that Joshua's got more tools than Pronger, but I know that the one problem he has, Jack, is I think you can take his confidence, and he's fighting a guy whose confidence won't be shook, and this guy is a kick fighter, so he's not going to fold when he gets punched the first time. I mean, that gives him a chance. In the heavyweight division, that's all you need, basically. You know, one punch, and it's like he's fighting a guy that's been stopped 3 times, who I think enters the ring with trepidation, and maybe if he's overconfident this time, it might even work out to Pronger's favor. But I'm going to pick Joshua, even though I'm not rooting for him, and maybe I want to jinx him.
We're on heavyweight boxing, and today, June 22nd, is a magical date because 88 years ago today, one of the most famous fights in boxing history, one of the big 3, along with Ali Frazier 1 and Jack Johnson, Jim Jeffries, the Max Schmeling, Joe Louis rematch took place. There was a documentary that came out a few days ago, and I'm kicking myself because the name escapes me this second. They showed it in the museum in Manhattan, a preview that some people told me they went to. One day later, they showed it on the History Channel. So I did see it a few days ago about Louis Schmeling, the lead up to the rematch, what was going on in the first fight. Now, the documentary.
I've seen a few documentaries on that.
Right.
I don't know if I saw that one, though, Jack.
One of the producers of the new documentary, and I question how much involvement he had, even though it was his company, was LeBron James, ironically, on there. So his name is lent to this. And it was something like a war between nations or whatever. But it was, to me, has that fight, it's 88 years later, because I would assume no one is alive who was at that fight. That would have to be my guess. I mean, that there wouldn't be one person in Yankee Stadium who would actually be alive, because for that to
if you're a little kid and you got in and you were 10, you would be 98.
98.
So
Yeah, it's possible. But at that time, New York had laws you had to be at least 16. So my guess is no one's alive who was at that fight. Do fights like that, legendary affairs and legendary fighters like Joe Louis, my question to you, Frank, is, does time forget them? Does their popularity fade in time? And I'm going to tell you why I think this, because this network has a debate show. And one of the hottest debates, for decades, is who would want to fight between Jack Dempsey and Joe Louis. If I proposed that as a question on our debate show, people wouldn't care, Frank, now. They wouldn't care. You would care. But sports fans all used to care about that. Even if they weren't boxing fans, they were intrigued by that. Is Ali ever going to get into that category?
Yes.
Where he's eventually 50 years from now, 60 years
Absolutely.
ago?
Absolutely. Now, look, the Schmeling-Lewis fight, Jack, the rematch, look, we can't speak to how big that was as far as the event and the politics of it, because obviously we weren't around. But I do think as time gets away from us, and it's, 88 years, pretty soon it'll be 100 years. I think they'll be forgotten, because once, like you said, the people that are gone that lived through it, you can't put yourself in that predicament. Just like we lived through Ali Frazier 1, and neither of us can picture anything being bigger than that. But in the time comes, Jack, where guys are going to say, well, can't see anything being bigger than Mayweather and Pacquiao, and we laugh at that. But goes by.
We laughed at it at the time. It was a big event. There's a difference. I think there's a difference, Frank, between how things were in the past and now. Now it's the event more than the fight, usually, in most cases. Okay.
Well, that wasn't a good fight because it was such a massacre. And even though Lewis lost, he was a 3-1 favorite in the rematch.
But then it was about the fights. It wasn't so much about the event. It's still about the fight in certain instances. For example, if Bivol fought Benavidez, we mentioned before, that would be about the fight, strictly about the fight. That wouldn't be an event. But even Crawford and Canelo, even though it was a heck of a good matchup as a fight, it was about the event as well. Big event. Mayweather, Pacquiao, good fight, even though they were past their peaks. But it was about the event. At the time, Louis Schmeling at that time, it wasn't about the event. It wasn't like it was. There were tensions were flaring. And, when you think of Joe Louis's legacy, and I'm going to tell you, something really annoys me a bit, the way the government treated him. Now listen, Frank, if you didn't pay your taxes, you got to be held accountable. If he had faulty bookmaking, but they harassed the guy, and Schmeling, the hated villain, the hated so-called Nazi supervisor, the United States of America made him rich afterwards with the Coca-Cola.
He was a big executive with Coca-Cola.
And they treated Louis like he was a nothing. Okay? If I were Joe Louis, revisionist thinking is the best thing. I would have embarrassed this country. I would have showed up at the police precinct and asked to be put in jail. I would ask, put me in jail. and leave me in jail because I'm never going to be able to pay this off. Either work this debt I owe out now, or leave me in jail, because that's the way it's going to have to be. I'm going to be panhandling in the street, begging people for money.
It is a shame when you compare how Schmeling ended up and how Joe Louis ended up. Who would have seen that at the time? And the other thing, Jack, and we've discussed this before, and I say this to guys in their 30s that I talk sports with. As much as we can read the history books and look at the films, now look, the films tell us how great Joe Louis was. We don't need anything beyond the films. We can see how great he was. But as far as what was going on at the time, look, kids that were born after 9/11, Jack, it means nothing to them. It's foreign to them. And that's the other thing when I talk about different sports, like you talk about your debate show, one of the big debates that will rage on for the next 10 years is who was greater, Michael Jordan or LeBron James? Now, the guys that are 30 years old didn't see Jordan. They didn't live in his time. They didn't know how feared he was. Okay, but you saw the best of Michael Jordan, and I saw the best of Michael Jordan. We can speak about that. We saw the best of Ray Leonard and Hearns. We saw the best of Mayweather. We can speak about who we think was greater, and I think it carries more weight. Where a lot of guys that are like 35, 40 years old, they only saw Mayweather, so they don't know anything about Leonard. His name means nothing to them. That's why I like to talk about things, Jack, and what I lived through and what I saw. I can see the films, how great Robinson was, but I can't talk about him like I could Leonard, because I lived through Leonard.
Exactly. That's why I'm I don't want to use the word dismissive of saying that Robinson was the greatest of all time, this and that. If you want to, fine. I'm not going to argue that. He's the consensus number one. He's the equivalent of what Michael Jordan is in basketball. But I'm not completely sold on the nonsense. Oh, Robinson against Crawford, it would have been a mismatch the way people.
No, I don't think it'd be a mismatch.
If they fought it welterweight, it probably would have been a nip and tuck fight, where either guy could have won. You think I'm dismissing Crawford's chances? If I say I think Crawford would have won a close decision over Robinson at welterweight, don't tell me I'm crazy, that there's something wrong with that. I'm entitled to have that opinion. It's a close type fight. I mean,
Jack, I would never. No, I agree with you. I could see that. I would pick Robinson, but if I woke up the next day and Crawford won, I can't be totally shocked. I mean, look, they forget those guys had bad nights too, but we're talking about few guys and far between, Jack, that we could say they could live with Robinson. Crawford just happens to be one of them. I don't think Mayweather could live with him, but I think Crawford could have.
Michael Olajide, the former middleweight contender, top middleweight contender, created a buzz the other day on social media. I normally don't take part in the debates, but I did make a couple of comments, and I didn't want to get in the middle of the debate. It was of the opinion that Rocky Marciano knocks out Tyson Fury. And people like Ben Dowdy, who's close to Michael, he pointed out the size. Ben didn't want to get involved in the debate. I put down Russell Peltz's view. Well, but if Marciano were fighting today, he wouldn't have been 187, 188. He would have been 210, 212 if he were fighting today. And Ben Dowdy answered me, and I guess correctly, but that's not the point. What he could be, it was what he was weight-wise. And I understand that it would be hard to pick a 187-pound Rocky Marciano to beat a big 245, 250-pound, a Tyson Fury who went a low 250s, let's say, or whatever. Just the size difference. But then again, Frank, I'm thinking to myself, Joe Frazier, the first Ali fight, 205 pounds. He could give 50 pounds away to Tyson Fury. He's not going to be denied. Fury's not outboxing him. Joe is going to get the bet of it.
Jack, I saw a little bit of that post, and my immediate reaction was, I think Michael said, or who said it? Michael said Marciano, right?
Yeah, he felt not with so much more skillful.
But I saw a couple guys say,
skillful.
I saw a couple guys on there say that they thought that Fury would brutalize Marciano. Now, look, it would be very hard for me to pick Marciano in that fight, but Jack, I will say this. Nobody who has lived brutalizes Marciano. Maybe George Foreman at Kingston, Jamaica. That's about it. But nobody brutalizes him. Nobody brutalizes him.
You know, Marciano,
but you can't
Marciano
compare those guys.
Marciano fans, in a sense, are like a cult. Like they're like,
especially the Italian ones, Jack. I grew up with that.
It's fine. Listen. I'm all for that. I remember the late Ed Post. He owned Sporting Goods. A friend of mine. We were amateur boxers together. Remained friends all the years. He became friendly with George Foreman to the point where Foreman actually wore his gear Spartan Brooklyn. George didn't do that for anyone without, getting paid. That he gave Eddie Post a freebie. And Eddie Post says to me, anyone who goes into George Foreman, moves into him, can't survive.
It's suicide.
Then I point out Rocky. And then he gets all nervous, Eddie Post, Italian American.
Because that's exactly how Rocky fights.
He says, well, Rocky would have outlasted Foreman, but George would have knocked him down a couple of times. He tried to get a middle ground.
Wow.
I loved it. You know who the Marciano fans respected? You could never tell them that Ali would beat their guy or anyone else. The one guy they had patience for was Joe Louis. I don't know whether you remember this name, Gabe Perillo. He was the artist for Ring Magazine a lot of years. Great artist. His son, who I was friendly with, was a Golden Glove champion. So I'm hanging out with the Perillos one day, and I loved teasing Gabe Sr. about Marciano. I loved teasing him because Gabe was in the same gym I was, so we had a lot of fun. And he had patience with me that he wouldn't have with other people because he knew me, from when I was a kid. And finally, I say, Joe Louis would have cut Rocky to ribbons. Finally, after saying Dempsey, Ali, and this and that guy would have beaten Marciano, Perillo Sr. says, now you're talking. Now you're finally making some sense. And then he realized he was saying someone would have beaten Rocky. And you could tell he got a little nervous. He says,
he got confused.
Maybe hit Louis with the right hand. But somehow Joe Louis was the one guy you could say to Italian Americans would have beaten Rocky Marciano. And they would have said, well, I did prime for prime. They would have said, well, I disagree, but, maybe it would have happened.
Two things. I want to make one point on the Louis Schmeling fight, but before I do that, I'll give you who was a real objective observer. Joey Giardello was my first trainer, and he would sit there all the time, and I can't use the language he would use about how Marciano would have destroyed Ali. And it was just totally coming from the point that he was Italian, an Italian white guy, and he didn't want.
Which is fine.
And that's just how he looked at it. But back to Louis and Schmeling, Jack. Because that fight was only 2 minutes and 2 seconds, I think what's lost about that was the style strategy that Louis and Jack Blackburn employed. If you remember in the first fight, Louis would come to him behind the jab and shuffle in, and Schmeling kept coming over the top with the right hand, and he hit him with, 120 in that fight? And Jack Blackburn said, Chappie, he says, you've got to crowd him, and you got to smother that right hand and come over with your right hand. And if you go back and look at the fight, that's what Louis did. He inched his way in quick with a couple jabs and then beat Schmeling to the punch with that right hand. And that little bit of strategy change by him bringing it to Schmeling instead of inching his way in was a huge factor in that fight, and why Louis was able to hit him with some of the most devastating right hands and body punches I've ever seen in a fight. Schmeling said for years when it rained, his back hurt from that fight.
Yeah, but I'm going to tell you, Schmeling was I believe, a little past his peak for the second fight. And Louis was in his prime. And
he hit in his prime.
Yeah, I mean, the only reason Schmeling won the first fight, Louis wasn't in top form.
He was golfing.
Louis wasn't, but whatever. That's Louis's fault, okay? The Schmeling deserved his due. Same thing with Jack Johnson and Jim Jeffries. I mean, Johnson is given this phenomenal credit. Jeffries was out of the ring for 6 years. 6 years.
And 100 pounds.
Right. Ali Frazier, you can argue that Ali was close to his prime. If people are saying, oh, well, Ali was off for 3.5 years. Ali had 2 fights going into Frazier, and he was only 29 years old. And Ali had some of his best fights after losing to Frazier. So at least Ali Frazier, that was a case of the guy. You could argue that both men, Joe certainly was in his prime, and you can argue that Ali was close to it, but Jeffries was way past it, and I think Schmeling was a bit past his, a little bit.
Absolutely. Jack, you know what I say to guys that make that excuse about Ali, about, wasn't in his prime or whatever? I said to those guys, I said, if you watch that fight, especially during the first 5 or 6 rounds, you would never say he was rusty or he was off a long time. That's how sharp he was. He just took somebody that ran him down and got him tired and then took over from the 10th round on.
I mean,
or afterwards. I mean, yes. Jack, tomorrow's also the anniversary of another one of our favorite fights.
I know. Yeah, Quarry Frazier, #1.
And that's how many years ago? Was that 20? That's that, what, 58 years?
31 and 26, 57 years ago.
Yep.
Yeah. But Quarry Frazier was one of the first big fights I was following. I picked Quarry in that fight, by the way. But
I picked Joe, even though I was rooting for Quarry.
Yeah, I mean, at what point did we realize how good Joe really was? I think that was the fight that finally convinced me, he was, a great, great fighter. The first
I saw him fight Bonavina in 68 at the Spectrum in December. So that's what? That's 7 months before that.
December 68. Yeah.
Right, December 10th, 68 at the Spectrum. I think around 68, Jack, is when because being such a big Ali fan, I feared for Ali fighting Frazier. I think from when I saw the Buster Mathis fight on closed circuit, the Ramos fight on closed circuit, and then we saw him live at the Spectrum. I think by then, but yeah, the Quarry fight, I kind of knew he was the next level, and I just knew his style would be all kind of trouble for Ali.
Well, we thought Buster Mathis had a good chance of beating Frazier when they fought in 68.
I didn't think that, but I know that was the thought, that he could box him. And for about 5 or 6 rounds, he did okay.
Yeah, but then after, Frazier, the way he beat Jimmy Ellis in their first fight, I mean, he looked virtually unbeatable. I couldn't see.
Well, Angelo Dundee said that, Jack. He said nobody would have beat that guy last night. Nobody.
Yeah,
after the Ellis fight.
Ferdy Pacheco telling me, well, Ellis, one of his arms wasn't well, was injured, but then he said Frazier was unbeatable that night. 2 good arms wouldn't have helped.
The only thing that hurt Ellis in that fight, he did have a long time off. In all fairness,
he couldn't.
He hadn't fought since Patterson, Jack. He had 2 fights canceled in the meantime, right? He was supposed to fight Peralta. He's supposed to fight.
This sounds crazy. When a guy loses badly, to say he fought a great fight and was great that night, even though he gets annihilated. Ellis was great that night. If you look at the way he threw punches,
he was good that night. You're right.
He was good that night, and he got blown out. It's like a pitch in baseball, Frank. You're making the best pitches. The curveball is curving as much as could be, but anything you throw, they're hitting it to the opposite field. It's finding a hole, a wind-blown home or whatever. And of course, some line drives, but you're making the best pitches or whatever. But that was a great fight, toe to toe. I mean, we only have a minute left, but listen, Quarry gave it a shot. He thought he could go toe to toe and knock Frazier out. He fought the fight. He wanted to fight, but Joe was just better at it, plain and simple.
Exactly. He could have never outboxed Quarry with his,
we're gonna have
his
a
short
guest
arm.
next week before we go. We're going to have on our show ring announcer Dave Diamante. He's going to be our guest next week. Ring announcer Dave Diamante. Okay, so we're both picking Boots Ennis. I'm going to pick
Inside the
him.
distance.
I'm going to pick him to win in 9 rounds. That's my
And I'll say between 8 and 10, I think he stops him.
So you're basically the same, 9 rounds too, in that vicinity. Okay, Frank, see you next week.
Thanks for watching, everybody. See you next week.